Now, the next one we talk about is one that you've heard a lot about. I mean, if you looked at the NEA budget, for example, you see the hierarchy of choices. But it does provide, I think, an excellent model for dealing with where we are with core values and leading to a clear mission and vision and how that foundation helps. This looks somewhat like my tree, right? When you think about the core values driving the whole organization. Well, we spend most of our time, obviously, in the activity and tactic area, right? We're all worried about that. That's where the budget is. The question is, what's the basis for those activities and tactics? Are they, in fact, do we actually have a purpose-driven organization? A purpose-driven organization. Because the foundation for a purpose-driven organization is in the core values, mission, vision, which then gives us a basis for the strategy, which then gives us a basis for the tactics and the programs or the activities of the organization. This is a terrific model when you begin to look at what systems thinking is all about, because you see it all here together. And that's why when Dennis was, I believe, Secretary Treasurer, he basically began to put this into the budget and use that as a model for us to do our work. Well, now you may say to yourself, all right, now it sounds really nice, you got all these nice theories and all this stuff. Does it work? Does it work? Well, we're going to now play a video for you that talks about how this was played out in a school setting. I want to kind of position it. This school used this without any knowledge of systems thinking. But when we look at the video, I'd like to have you focus on these questions. And you will see, I think, the models I've talked about so far come true. So look, and these questions are in your packet. You may want to pull it out so you can just kind of use it as a model as you're viewing the Allen School. But you can see that what was the priority of the principal, what changes the faculty have to make, did the Allen School community, how they reached decisions, what was the critical decisions that they made? Did you see the daily use of the concepts of the core theory of success, the hierarchy of choices, and the four-player model? And the final one, what was the length of time it took them to transform this school? The other screen I'd like to have you consider as you look at this, I may be going back and forth here too much, but the idea of both looking at schools and looking at the affiliate. There's a direct relevance to both of them because it fits in both areas as you look at the models that we've been talking about. All right? So what we're going to do now, I hope this technology works okay. We're going to hit the video, and we're going to lower the lights. But what we did see, I think, in the Allen School was that they, in fact, did collaborate, that they did take the time to find the right questions. The staff first sought the personal change that they had to make. It wasn't outside them. It was what they had to do to find their own sense of values. And, of course, there was a clear mission and vision and core values that we saw there. But you know that transformation is not easy, as you saw there. It took them, 5, 6 years to make that final transition. And what we find is that it causes friction. You can't move to the known without understanding what the unknown is going to be. And it's difficult because there is this power of the steady state that we talk about all the time. That the known is so powerful, to try to move beyond that known is very difficult. And to try to identify what we might be versus what the current reality is consistently causes a sense of friction. So the issue is, if you look at this chasm here, and if we have over here, if this is where we want to be, we've created what we want the desired state to be, the future state to be. We also have to understand what the current state is. And if you will, there is a huge gap right in here. And it's the gap that causes the tension. We know where we want to go. We know where we are. But how do we cross this gap? And that brings us really to our last model. We know the vision. We've identified it. There's structural tension that takes place between the two areas. But we also know that it's vital to keep moving and not stay where we are. And so we come to the creative tension model. And this is a very, very important concept here. Once we have the vision, once we know what the current state is, we have this gap. And once we recognize that structural tension, a fundamental question has to be answered. And that is, which way are we going to go? Are we going to go to the emotional tension and go down this route that says, I've been there before, we've done that, and we get into a problem-solving mode, which then gets us into a reactive orientation, and basically we stay stuck to where we are. That's one choice. The second choice is to move into the creative tension mode, where we then begin to say, I know what we want. We become more creative. We begin to look at what we might want to do with a generative, a creative orientation, and we move forward. We can't deny the current reality. That's always there. But one of the things that I've learned in the last several years before I retired, I always thought you would go from the current to the future. And then one of these days, I just had this epiphany. That's the wrong approach. You've got to go from where you want to be and build the bridge back. Because otherwise, we just stay stuck in where we currently are. So, what we found is that systems thinking, it does take time. It provides real change because as we go through the process, the players in that process change themselves. It's not just that old strategic planning process where we have these nice, cute words that go on the shelf of indecision, but I become the change, I become changed in it, and I begin to lead that change. And I can tell you this, that the NEA would not have led forward on this hadn't it been for Reg Weaver and John Wilson being the champions of this, then being guided by Dennis Van Rokel as a new president. It takes fundamental leadership here to begin to move this in a different direction, because it is not easy. And remember that old steady state back here. It's very easy to get pulled back into that. And unless the leadership of the affiliate, the leadership within the state, when it begins to deal with the issue of where we're going with public education, those leaders have to understand and have to be the championship of where we're going to go. Now, this is what we've been talking about, and you saw this fundamental statement by Ed Deming. Remember, Ed Deming was the American who went over to Japan after World War and basically applied all those key systems thinking things to Japan to make them move from where they were. And what does Ed say up here? He says there can be no true organizational change without personal change. And folks, I'm telling you, that's where it is. This reminds me of the old Dilbert cartoon, where Dilbert says, I'm for change, you go first. So change does start with me. More personally, I am the change. I am the change. Now, our organization does provide hope in a number of different ways. We provide leadership to hope. We provide hope for better working conditions, improved working conditions. We provide hope for the quality of education for our students and hope to make a difference in the communities that we work in. But the bottom line is that hope without action is merely a dream. And finally, I'd like to say that I absolutely believe in this statement by Gandhi, is that be the change you wish to see in the world. That's what it's all about, folks. Thank you very much.